As an echo gentleman, just look something at you and look hard to your mind. Sit down at my team, put your mind at ease. You can relax, you don't even need to do anything I feel. I can read your future, I can change around until I look deep into your heart and soul. Make your wildest dreams come true.
Salutations, Legion ghouls and freaks. Welcome to this podcast of the storm where insane slashers, undead blood drinkers, and all-around crooked beans convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Mage of Madness, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
I hope you're satisfied. But if you ain't, don't blame me. You can blame my friends on the other side.
Yep. Okay. So, we have a relatively tamed one this week. So we're going to listening/reviewing Christopher Lee's The Raven, which is 12 minutes long. Which is The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, and just discuss that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, shall we Jack-o'-lantern?
I was thinking Nevermore because it's The Raven, but
yeah, no, that I think that works. Yeah, so Nevermore.
Nevermore.
The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
Okay. Well, it is actually...
honestly, Christopher Lee is the perfect voice to read anything spooky, and I think this in particular really works with him.
Right. Okay, so kind of a behind-the-scenes thing. We had a discussion about this prior to the first week of October. We thought about reading the poems of Edgar Allan Poe due to the kind of topic of early Halloween/Gothic literature and stuff like that. But we decided not to do that because we do not have the kind of presence to read that. Unfortunately, my voice is.
So we outsourced it to Christopher Lee because if anybody has the presence, he does.
Yeah,
we have to play Dracula and Saruman. I don't know how much better you could get.
I'm actually curious if. Well, he is very much traditional. He was a traditional gentleman and stuff. I just wonder if he'd be able to play in a modern setting, like in a show or a movie that's set in modern times.
Well, I mean, he was the father in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He did fine there.
Oh yeah. No, I forgot. So yeah, I got nothing. Nothing else to really add. So shall we Nevermore?
We shall. Nevermore.
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow.
Don, since you are a literature geek, no offense,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any thoughts or analysis you can provide upon the opening verses?
For one thing, it always makes me laugh when Poe here talks about I was examining many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. Because every 5 minutes my being just wants to see, what were you reading, Edgar? What were you reading? I want to know. Because I really, really want to know what he was reading and this happened. Because it seems to me very much like The Raven is at least somewhat autobiographical. Because we do know that Edgar Allan Poe had a lover / girlfriend that died around this time, and to the best of my knowledge, she was actually named Lenore. So part of me is like, did this just straight up actually happen? I do think my favorite part of the poem is the part that begins with in the bleak December and talks about the fireplace and how it works, because you can almost feel him just sitting there, possibly wrapped in a blanket in an armchair or something, in a very rundown apartment, trying to read a book, and the coals in the fire just sort of spurting out and casting all sorts of shadows in the curtains and whatnot. Although I will say that if you're sober and tried this, it probably wouldn't work. The thing with Edgar Allan Poe is he had drug abuse issues, particularly opium, like most writers and creative types had at this time period. So most of the dark atmosphere of this poem is mostly just due to the fact that Edgar was sitting in his chambers next to the fire reading books, high as fuck on opium when this happened, if it ever actually did happen, or
Okay, so
whatever inspired it happened.
So taking the comments, Yo Ed, and he says lost love or lost in general. Oh, Ed. Yeah, Ed Brewer is watching us right now. What's up, Ed?
Yeah, no, I got that part. I just wasn't sure what he was pertaining to.
Lenore, I believe.
Yeah.
Wasn't that his?
So yeah, I'm assuming, and it worked given what we know of Edgar Allan Poe's tendency for toward love affairs and whatnot, that he had a girlfriend named Lenore, and she would become the most famous woman in English literature for a hot minute there, because holy fuck, that woman has been immortalized for the last 200 years because of this fucking book.
Alright. Shall we?
Nevermore.
Nevermore.
Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore. Nameless here forevermore. And the silken...
Sorry.
Also, Edgar, you were lying shit, because you say Lenore here about 5 more freaking times. She is not nameless here forevermore. You keep naming her. Edgar, I know you were high on opium over the course of this, but holy fuck, man.
A part of me thinks nameless refers to no longer be able to be called by name due to her passing. That's how I interpret that.
I mean, I mean, maybe, but most of his like little side comments like this are him like directly addressing the reader and talking about the nature of the poem itself. So I've always interpreted as, nameless here forevermore being like, I'm not going to say her name anymore. At which point he continues to say her name like 50 times.
Or
Now, granted, that's in dialogue with the Raven itself, but he apparently had the presence of mind to write this post facto, after the fact. Therefore, he should have caught himself and been like, wait, I said nameless here forevermore, and then I named her like 3 more times. So, Edgar, you dead and dying, lying fuck, you. You can't blame that one on the opium, is what I'm saying.
you good? You good?
Yeah.
All right. Nevermore.
Nevermore.
And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor in entreating entrance at my chamber door."
See, this is the line where it becomes blatantly obvious that Poe was on something when he wrote this, because all he's describing there is the wind pushing his curtains around, and apparently it gave him a catatonic fit because he was so freaking high on opium, is my standing theory. This is your mind on the paranoia of opium, I suppose. Don't do drugs, kids.
Are we really the best people to say that? Are we really the best people to say that?
Well, I avoid drugs in general, barring the medication pumps that I have in my body and also the occasional sleeping pill.
Okay, fair enough. And
I can say that, and unless you have a inner city drug connection that you haven't told me about, and in which case I shall have to shame you as your friend.
I hate you so much with that. Like,
I'm sorry, but it was right there and it needed to be said.
That's fine, country boy. But
we have fun.
Yeah, I just like how it's written, how it's described. Like, you feel it, like you're actually there. And I feel like that's kind of a thing that's missing in modern literature.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there's a point to where it can be over explained. It's similar to a conversation we recently had, Dalton.
There definitely can be a problem with overly purple prose and overly like circumlocutory and wordy.
Yeah. I believe since we talked about H.P. Lovecraft last week, his writing when describing things tended to run a little too long.
Yeah, he definitely would have been one of those writers that tended to ramble on if he wasn't so unearthly meticulous about every word he chose.
True. I am saying though that I think Poe has struck kind of the balance of being descriptive but not letting it like overtake the writing, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's
definitely a power to this poem. I mean, when you get right down to it, all it's really about is a guy was sitting at home alone in the dark on a cold December night. He was, again, as per my conjecture, high on opium, and a bird came in and said a word that made him think of his dead girlfriend, and it freaked him the fuck out. That's really all that happens in The Raven when you get right down to it. And yet, it's been well over 100 years at this point, and we're still talking about it because he's so good at conveying it.
Okay, so Ed Brewer said at 8:14, I'm sure the smack kicked in about here.
Uh-huh.
Probably.
Well, in all honesty, he had probably been high on the smack for quite a bit before this, because the way that he was describing the shadows of each successive dying ember, I believe was how he put it, also makes me think, yeah, you were a little on something, weren't you, Ed? By which I mean Poe, not Ed in chat.
I think we're just going to stick with Poe
Mm-hmm.
when we're discussing the writer.
I enjoy the thing I do where I get to refer to like authors and writers and shit by their familiar names. So it's very interesting for me to be able to sit here and be like Ed, referring to Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah. That is a name you don't hear often anymore.
Edgar?
Yeah.
Yeah, there needs to be a renaissance of that name. Someone who has children that they can name things, get on that.
I would, but I ain't got no kids yet.
Yet being the operative word. You got time.
True. Okay. Nevermore.
Nevermore.
Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more. Presently, my soul grew stronger. Hesitating then no longer, Sir, said I, or Madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. The fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door.
You know what's funny? I think the earliest memory I can recall of this poem being said is from the movie, one of the best movies, I would argue, for comic books, The Crow.
Mm-hmm.
It was right at the scene where Eric Draven busted into that pawn shop to get his wedding ring back.
Mm-hmm.
Where he quoted the Raven, which I find it funny that a movie called The Crow quoted the Raven.
It is funny, especially when you consider how often ravens have been associated with, dark and mysterious, mystical things.
And I've actually looked at pictures of crows and ravens, and they look rather similar, to be fair.
Yeah, it's in a similar way as who the fuck can honestly, at a glance, tell alligators and crocodiles apart. You have to actually look at the body structure and the snout structure.
Yeah.
Same thing with the crow and the raven. Unless you can actually sit there and meticulously compare one to the other, it's like, okay, this one has slightly longer beak, this one is slightly larger, and yada yada yada.
I think my city has a lot of either crows or ravens. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's crows because of the calling.
Crows are more common, so probably crows in your area there.
Which is funny because, I heard when I would walk home from school, specifically my elementary days, I'd hear them calling in the trees by the houses of the neighborhoods I'd go into. And I've just always associated crows being more in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm. Well, if ever you are cut down before your time, you know who to talk to about the resurrection.
True. Oh, Ed Brewer. Ed Brewer says it's like the despair and sanity is rapping on the door and window of his mind, and they are just barely holding it all back. That is.
I think you might be reading a little bit too much into it there, Ed.
And that's coming from Dalton, who reads too much into anything all the time.
Yeah, I speak for experience. I can understand where you're coming from a meta perspective, but the thing about the Raven that I like actually a lot is it's fairly straightforward. Like I said, it's about a guy sitting alone December night by the fire reading books, which I still want to know what books he was freaking reading, but that's a different story. High as a kite on opium, knocking at the door. He thinks it's a visitor, which is probably a reasonable assumption. He goes and looks, nothing there. And then the bird shows up and it says the one word that makes him get all existential about his girlfriend and then panic. It's really, really straightforward. It's just him telling us the story about this thing happened to me one December night and it was creepy, and so poem. Basically. There's really no greater subtext to the Raven other than Poe recounting his own personal pain over losing a lost loved one and this weird thing that happened to him involving a Raven one night. My one question is, why the fuck does he have a bust of Pallas of all people above his chamber door? I'm just like, why? What is that doing there? Like, I understand that decor and stuff was different back in the Victorian era and whatnot, but holy fuck, why was there a just random bust sitting there? Art Deco's weird, but it's not quite that weird.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes left of this. So.
Okay, so nevermore.
Nevermore.
That I scarce was sure I heard you. Here, I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before.
Again, maybe it's just like the writer in me and stuff. It feels like there's a deeper meaning there.
Well, the deeper meaning is that he was a paranoid dude on opium, and therefore he saw darkness, and it made him get all spooked. Which is honestly kind of darkly funny to me, because if I thought there was someone knocking at my door and I opened it to find nothing there, I would kind of be relieved, because it would be like, oh, it must have been the wind or something. I can go back.
The wind knocks on your door. The wind. Look, I grew up in the inner city. When something like that happens, you get the hell out of Dodge. Okay, I've watched too many horror movies to know that you hear a knocking on your door and there's nothing there, you get the hell out. All right?
Well, yeah. In that context, yeah, probably. But at least as far as this poem goes, we don't really have much of a reason to think there's anything funky going on, other than Poe's own bizarre opium-induced raving.
Okay, so Ed Brewer says, so cynical, Dalton.
Not really cynical, because honestly, the simplicity of the Raven makes it more beautiful to me, I think, because every 2-bit horror writer tries to abstract, woo, and it only ever drags it down. Only somebody like Lovecraft or Stephen King, when he's on a good day, can genuinely make that sort of abstraction work. Most people just do it because they're going through a gothic phase in high school and they want to be edgy. So I actually like the straightforward interpretation of the Raven. I think it makes it both more relatable and also more compelling.
Right. Okay. Give me a second. Yeah, give me a second. Okay. Nevermore?
Nevermore.
But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This whisper, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more.
Again, it's just a really engaging poem. Honestly, I think also it helps that Christopher Lee's reading it. That keeps you engrossed.
Well, yeah. The man had a voice that could have powered 100,000 audio dramas.
Also,
and if I had my way, he would have been one of the people I would have casted as Ringo the Ambulance in a 10 adaptation. But alas, Death had other ideas, so went. But
also, apparently he was James Bond during World War II.
in like the IRL sense of he was a spy.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's actually like a documentary on Christopher Lee on YouTube. I will, whenever I get a chance, I will post that like on Twitter or something.
Yeah, dude led a very weird and interesting life.
Yeah, gotta respect him even more for that.
Yeah. And given how high my respect for Christopher Lee was before I knew that, that's saying something.
Although he didn't really like talking about it much.
Well, I imagine being a spy in World War II involved seeing some shit, so he might have had a little bit of PTSD.
Well, I was also just kind of assuming that. Well, that, and also he just didn't. He had the humility to not glorify it.
Yeah, he did. As awesome and imposing a presence as he had, I don't think he had many illusions of his own importance. I think he knew he led an interesting life, and he had no problem discussing it necessarily, but he didn't get any personal egotism out of it. He just sort of, this is the thing that happened to me. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm lucky I have the life I have, and I'm not going to take it for granted. Which, if that was what he thought, then all the more power to him.
Right. Okay. Shall we?
Nevermore.
Nevermore.
Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore.
Again, I got nothing. Like, it's just, you're not wrong about it being like.
I feel like he might have stumbled over thereat is there, because it's supposed to be like in one beat of the meter, and he kind of broke it up. Because I think he just wasn't used to seeing the word there at when he was reading it. It was like there at what? I can kind of see that.
Sounded fine
or
to me.
I can hear that in the way that he said that.
Well, sounded fine to me. But maybe it's just, again, like I'm trying to like understand what is being said is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Nevermore?
Nevermore.
Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here, I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore.
Yeah, again, like you just don't get this kind of writing these days, and I mean, I'm sure you can make the argument like how language and writing back then was obviously greatly different due to like the time and culture and stuff.
Yeah, I think a large part of it is people just don't remember how to freaking talk properly, and it's me off. And yes, I'm aware that I swear like a sailor just then, kind of defeating my own point. But it does bother me that we don't seem to. A lot of us don't seem to maintain the ability to string together a artful sentence, and it's really really annoying.
It's not
Um,
even that to me. It's more of there doesn't seem to be much. There feels like there's a lot of passion and a lot of other things put into the writing, and you can feel it. And that's a lot. And I've said that so many times. Obviously, when you put your heart and soul into a project,
yeah,
when someone watches it or reads it or sees it, you know, you can feel
yeah.
like the audience feels that.
Mhm. My one question with this part has always been, what exactly does he mean by a raven of the days of yore? Because the days of yore is like an old timey way of saying, the good old days or yesteryear or what have you. And I'm like, what sort of quality of this raven is that supposed to convey? Like, in what way were ravens used in what he would have considered the good old days that they aren't used anymore? That you felt the need to point out this raven looked like a raven of the days of yore. Like what? I don't want to be an idiot here, but what the fuck does that mean? What quality did the ravens of yore have that the modern day ravens don't? That you felt the need to mention it?
Hmm. Shall
But
we?
anyway, I shall ponder this later. But never mind.
Nevermore.
Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more.
I've already made my query as to why is there a bust of Pallas above his chamber door in the first place.
I have a
And
question.
again, I know architecture and decor were different back in the day, but still, it bugs me. Why is there a bust there?
I have a question. Who's Palace?
Pallas was a Roman general, I believe, off the top of my head. I believe that's where Pallas is from.
A part of me thinks there's somewhat of a significance of that. In terms,
There may be, but I've never looked into Pallas beyond like occasionally seeing him mentioned in some historical document. And again, I might be completely off base, but I believe Pallas was a Roman general.
I don't know, there's Roman mythology of Palace. Okay, Palace was the Titan god of battle and warcraft.
Okay, so yes, Roman was where I was going from that, but yeah, I guess he was a Titan, which apparently not one of the more well known ones. But again, I must ask, why was there a busted palace above his chamber door? Did he put it there as a decoration? Was it already, did it come with the room? Was it part of the architecture? What the hell is the story with this random bust of palace? I know there was like a revival of, you know, Greco-Roman architecture back in the day, um, as as per like the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, but why was there a bust of Pallas above his chamber door? These are the questions that I need answered. I don't care about Lenore necessarily or what the significance of the raven is. I want to know why in God's name is there a bust of Pallas above his chamber door.
Actually, there seem to be a lot of different things. Like apparently Athena had a first name which was Pallas.
Hmm.
Also, apparently there is, I don't know, there's a lot of things here.
Mhm.
But again, like,
Anyway,
maybe
shall
it's,
we?
I was just gonna say, like, maybe it's the writer in me, but I feel like when there are certain things called to attention that it means something, either symbolically or uh, in terms of theme.
Or, like I said, this actually happened, in which case he actually had a bust of Pallas above his chamber door, and I want to know why he had it there. I'm
Ed,
just a really, really big fan of obscure Roman deities. I could vibe with that if that was the reason. Like, he just randomly found a bust of Pallas at a flea market one day or something, and was like, I want this.
Ed,
I would totally make that choice as well, but holy fuck, why?
Ed Brewer says he's tripping. Yep.
Me or Poe?
I assume Poe.
Yeah, but he's not tripping so badly that he is unaware of his surroundings. Like, he knows the room he's in, and I don't think he's imagining the bust of Pallas above the chamber door. I'm just saying, why is it there?
All right, shall we?
Yes, nevermore.
Shall we nevermore?
Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore.
I got
See, I like this moment because it shows, or it sets up just how much the problem is with the dude in the poem, not necessarily with the raven itself, because he goes from finding the raven amusing and like noble looking and stuff to and smiling at it to a few lines later. Like, I hate, he literally does the drug thing of like, I love you, man, and I hate you, and don't you ever come back and stuff, and he's doing it to a bird.
I feel like
if
drugs.
anything else, this is an anti-drug PSA right here for opium.
For some reason, I feel like drugs back then were a lot more hard hitting than ones today.
Particularly with opium, probably, but also drugs were way more legal, and generally you did them for like recreation more than because I'm of the opinion that prohibition makes everything worse, and maybe I'm being naive, but I think that if we had never started making a big stink about these substances, the people that wanted to use them would use them, and the people that overdid it a little bit on them would either die or they would seek help and they would get help because it would be considered a medical issue, and the ones that didn't care either way would just go on with their lives. But because they're illegal and because there's this big, ominous risk factor of it all that attracts people who probably would have never tried it to begin with, and then we get addicts.
Oh,
And because it's illegal and because you can't go to a hospital like it's a medical problem, you have to treat it like it's a criminal problem, we made the problem like 10 times worse.
yep. By the way, Ed Brewer was referring to Poe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Nevermore?
Nevermore.
Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvel this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door.
Hmm. Again, I got nothing. Like, I feel like there's something deeper there, but I can't. It's hard for me to like dig.
I like that. I like that Lee changes his voice a little bit for when he's actually delivering the Raven's line, because it almost makes it sound like the Raven is annoyed at Poe, like nevermore, and like it's almost like the like 19th century version of "fuck you," like nevermore, leave me alone, go away.
All right, so Edward says some drugs cause good folks to hurt others for their habit. They need to stay illegal, in my opinion. And I feel like this discussion for
I don't know. I think a lot of the problems with drugs, especially street drugs, could be solved by putting them under FDA jurisdiction and
guys,
holding them to medical quality and purity standards. Because a lot of the problem with street drugs isn't even the drugs themselves; it's the toxic shit they're cut with. That they have to be so that they can be made in non-laboratory conditions, because they can't be made in laboratory conditions because they're illegal. But that's a discussion for a different day.
yeah. Everyone else says the drugs turn concepts into physical realities. Well, yeah, he's asked that. Ed Brewer asked the drugs. I assume, do the drugs turn concepts into physical reality? In terms of the Raven,
you could make the argument, I suppose, but my interpretation is these are literal events, and he's just reacting to them weirdly because of the drug paranoia.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Nevermore shall we be?
We shall be nevermore.
Bird or beast above the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further then he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered.
I got nothing. Nevermore.
Yeah. Nevermore.
Still I scarcely more than muttered. Other friends have flown before. On the morrow will he leave me, as my hopes have flown before? And the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster, until his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of never, nevermore.
Again, just
now you can see where the drugs are definitely kicking in, because he knows that the Raven can only say nevermore, and yet when he has a random thought that nevermore might be in reply to, he's like, were you speaking specifically to me about that? It's drug paranoia.
well, no, I was just more enwrapped by Christopher Lee's Sir Christopher Lee's voice and just the music, and
Well, actually, was he ever knighted?
I believe so.
I thought he was, but I never looked it up or anything.
Would it be the?
I know Ian McKellen was, but I didn't know if Christopher Lee ever had been.
Is it Sir
But
with
yeah.
an I or an E?
Huh?
Is it Sir with an I or an E? Like the older, like the present version or the older version?
It would be with an I.
Okay.
S-I-R.
Okay, Sir. Yes, yeah, he was knighted.
Oh, but then Sir Christopher Lee is.
And then yeah, he was knighted. Huh.
Oh, good for him.
But he was only knighted
Well,
in 2009.
So both of the wizards from Lord of the Rings ended up being knighted. That's awesome.
I just find it weird that he was knighted in his 80s.
Yeah, you would think that he would have gotten it before then, but you know, at least they knighted him before he died. At least it wasn't posthumous.
Yeah, true. Okay, let me check the comment. Okay, Ed Brewer says the music really kicked in on that one line. Yeah, it's just like I think you find yourself more engrossed with The Raven when it's read by Christopher Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Shall we be, or to be not, nevermore?
We shall be nevermore.
But the raven, still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking evermore.
I might have a theory on the bird of yore thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it could possibly be well, I believe in like some mythologies or cultures that the raven or the crow are considered to be an omen or a symbol of death, correct?
Yeah.
So what if what if the raven is more a symbol of death, as in the beginning of the poem he requites a lost love, someone who had died and passed. So maybe the raven has come to is a form of death that came to him to say to stop grieving or to cease the grieving as you've grieved enough.
Maybe that strikes me as a little bit of a reach as well.
Yeah,
but
I understand. I get that it's a stretch. I think it's much of a stretch. It was just something that came to my head while we were listening to it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if we want to go down that particular, the mythical symbolism rabbit hole, Odin's ravens were Hugin and Munin and thought and memory, so maybe it has something to do with memory and the raven being the bird of memory, therefore being the bird of yore, as in yesteryear. So maybe, but it just it always struck me in when I read it that he was referring to ravens once having a particular purpose or a particular like station, and then not having it anymore. And so when he sees this one, he's like, "Oh, it's like the bird, it's like the ravens of yore." And I'm just like, what yore are you referring to? To what yore is this reference being made?
All right. Okay. Nevermore.
Nevermore.
This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl, whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet violet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er. But whose velvet violet lining, with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press nevermore.
For some reason, this feels like a kind of that last part. For some reason, I was getting somewhat of a Shakespearean villainous monologue at the end of their line.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like a villain monologuing of something that he's lost that made him the villain as he lies dying.
Yeah, you could see Macbeth or Cassius maybe saying something to this effect in Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I don't think you catch Richard III saying it, because Richard III is one of the most unrepentant assholes in literature. But you could definitely see like Macbeth or Cassius saying this.
Yeah, but I got nothing to really say to that. Like, it's really just describing stuff in a very colorful manner that makes you feel like I'm actually in the chair.
Yeah. Yeah, all I'm getting from that part is just I want his furniture.
Yeah.
Because the way he's describing it makes it sound awesome, and I want that furniture.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? For some reason, every time I'm hearing the Raven, I'm picturing as we're listening to this, I'm picturing the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror and the parody they did of. Well, they didn't do a parody. They did a version of the Raven.
Yeah, with Homer as the Poe point of view character, James Earl Jones reading, and Bart as the Raven.
Yeah, and so I'm just like I'm just picturing that whole scene in my head with this voiceover.
That would have been a very funny. Way of doing it. Somebody should edit those together.
I don't think the short is that long though.
No, I think they skip over parts of it, maybe.
Yeah. Because I don't really remember like the second half of this. I don't think we really covered that much of it in school. When we did cover it, it wasn't often.
Well, it's fairly short, so I don't remember. I can't think of any times where we covered it, but we didn't finish it.
I don't know. It's just I don't remember it really. Like the description. I don't remember the second half. Is the thing. It could have been because we didn't really cover or talk about it much.
The second half of this is where he starts to get paranoid about the Raven and is like, quit thy form from off my arts and quit thy form from above my door, and so on.
Shall we?
Yeah.
Nevermore.
Nevermore.
Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee. By these angels he has sent thee respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the Raven, nevermore.
Yeah, again, I don't think it would have been as cool if we had read it.
No. There's no way in hell.
Yeah.
If we had read it, it would possess its coolness, nevermore.
Wah, wah, wah.
Case in point.
Oh, that was for the pun.
I know.
It's just I think our voices are too high to have this be serious.
Yeah. Too high and too nasally.
Yeah. All right. Shall we?
Nevermore.
Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still. If bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
I honestly got none. I mean, like, I like how he's incorporating the idea of angels and devils, and like he's trying to, like, if it's to be like an actual story, it's an interesting idea to like for the main Poe, for the character of Poe in this story.
Yeah.
To try to decide whether or not he's an angel or demon and how he would go about it.
Yeah, like he wants this bird to be significant. He can't decide whether this bird is sent to help him or to damn him, but he feels, probably because of the drug paranoia, that this bird is significant, so he's going with it.
I mean, look at the circumstances, right? And also do take into account that he is pretty high on something.
Yeah.
You know, it's a dark December night.
Mm-hmm.
He's alone by himself in his home. And then a raven just kind of appears seemingly out of nowhere and lands upon the head of a Roman god or titan.
Yeah.
On a bust of a Roman titan above your door. When you had previously opened the door, there was nothing there. And then that raven just appears.
Mm-hmm.
I think even into a sane person, that would seem odd.
I mean, yeah, but there's a big gulf between odd and preordained by some other power.
True. I'm just saying, like, I think even if it isn't, like, truly supernatural, I think one would perceive it if it's a story described to you in a way like this. One would think there's something supernatural to it.
I mean, I would probably be given to something like that if this happened to me. But then again, I don't live in the 19th century, and we don't really get many ravens around here. So if a bird just randomly shows up my window, I just feel like that's probably gotta mean something.
I honestly think there would be more crows in the countryside. Ravens would populate
most likely, yeah.
Yeah, ravens would populate the. Well, I have crows, not ravens, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are more crows than ravens just in America in general.
True.
So.
Okay.
Nevermore.
Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels named Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Okay. That last part right there, I honestly kind of get a Romeo and Juliet vibe.
Mm-hmm.
More in the sense that, Romeo. Again, I'm like getting a Romeo and Juliet villain kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's begging to a god above as he's holding his dead lovers to usher her into heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe and let's take the quote of the Raven, nevermore, that is the angels saying, no, we will not usher her into heaven.
Yeah, it's like, will I ever hold her in my arms again? Nevermore. Fuck off. Basically.
Ed Brewer says, same thing happened to Bruce Wayne, except his thing was bats. You know what's funny? I created a Batman character, but I wrote one, and I've talked to Dawn about this character a lot. I legitimately had the idea of, instead of bats, it would be crows that hung around him.
Mm. And now, just because Ed said that, now I want a Batman prequel story where it's a parody of the Raven with a bat.
I think there's kind of a scene like that in year one, like in both the movie and the comic, in a sense. Though, granted,
somebody needs to write it as a poem because that's awesome.
I will. I feel like I gotta do that. God damn it!
I either you need to do it or I need to get off my ass and do it. One of the two. And I don't. And it has been ages since I wrote a poem, although not too long because I did write one recently.
I'll probably do it for next Halloween. I got a video set up already, so I gotta finish that one first. Anyway, nevermore.
Nevermore.
Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend. I shrieked, upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting. Still is sitting on the padded bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul, from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted evermore.
And that is the end of the video.
Yes, we shall listen to it nevermore.
Right. Okay. So Yeah, no, it was. I liked it a lot.
Like I truly believe that most of this was Poe's own damn fault for taking too much opium, but just playing in his own head for a minute because I think it's kind of funny. If this bird were the divine messenger that he wants to believe it is, it basically just told him, "No, you'll never see her again. No, she's not going to heaven. You can fuck off, and also I'm not leaving, so fuck off." So this bird is the trolliest of the trolls if it were actually a divine messenger. As it happens, I think most of that is confabulation of Poe's own opium-rattled mind, but at least in his own head, this is the funniest thing ever. Or it should be.
Right. Okay, so our next topic would be that of the top 5 Goosebumps books. Not books, episodes.
Of the TV series.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I had watched through them earlier in the week, and there weren't really any that interest me. Like, there were like only 3, and at most, well, no, actually 4, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just I think the show isn't as good as like the books. To be fair,
No,
but I think that's mainly
No.
because of budgeting and like it was a '90s show with a very small budget for every episode.
And child actors. Let's not forget child actors.
True. All right. So you want to start? I started last time, so you want to start this time, Dom?
All right. My number 5 is going to have to be Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns. And I put this one on here mostly because of the tongue-in-cheek Halloween themedness of it. And also the fact that it's one of the few Goosebumps episodes with a unambiguously happy but also what the fuck ending.
I remember that episode. Again, like it's just not. It wasn't really one that really stood out to me. So
basically, long story short, it's Halloween, and this brother and sister are going out with their 2 best friends before said best friends have to leave and move to a different city, country, whatever. And they go out trick-or-treating, and they get attacked by these giant fucking jack-o'-lantern monster creatures that turn out to be the friends themselves. But the twist is the friends are not moving to another country or city or whatever. They're going back home to their home planet because they're aliens. But it's not like they're going to eat their friends or anything. They're just having one last dose of Halloween hijinks before they have to go back to their home planet. It's actually kind of a sweet ending.
yeah.
Like I said, what makes me drawn to this one is the Halloween themedness of it, and it's several layers of weird all wrapped in together, and that always is a good thing, especially when you put Halloween as a context over it. So, yeah, number 5, Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns.
Okay, so my number 5, ironically, if I were doing a book list, it would be like my number 2 or number 1. But the episode in question is Attack of the Mutant. And again, it's just I think the budget for the episode is really telling, mainly with like the costumes and stuff. But it has to do with superheroes in comics and more of like the kind of it's basically like it's my whole thing. Honestly, it's like what really got me into like, and I think I've said this before, is like Attack of the Mutants, specifically like the book and the episode itself, kind of got me into comics as a whole.
Mhm.
So I think without Goosebumps, I might not have been a superhero fan. Well, not as much as as I am now. Like I might not have gotten into comics. Is the thing.
So yeah, good for at the very least I owe this episode because it resulted in a situation where we met. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Plus, I think it was also kind of one of the first episodes I ever saw growing up when I watched Goosebumps. Obvious basic plot is basically this kid who's a comic book geek reads this comic book about the mass mutant. And as it turns out, he's real. Like the supervillain, the mass mutant, is real. And is going after the boy who reads these comics. Is also trying to figure out trying to figure out what's going on. And he comes across like many things he thought were fake. Again, like I said, I think the book is better because it's capable of doing a lot of cool and neat things in the book, like settings, while obviously,
Okay. I'm back.
Yeah. While obviously, it's while the show is obviously very constricted and stuff, it doesn't look as good. I just really like it. It was really cool.
Mm.
All right, number 4.
Okay, my number 4 is called You Can't Scare Me. It's about these bullies who try to scare this little girl, and they keep trying and they keep trying and they can't scare her, and they actually end up inadvertently summoning an actual monster, and they're all broken up about the fact that it's going to eat her or destroy her or something, and she just makes friends with the thing. Because she's just that weird, and she's just that immune to being scared by stupid bullshit that everyone else is scared of for stupid reasons. And I mainly like this episode for the fact that I relate kind of to the little girl in this episode, because the reasons people have to be afraid of things are very, very stupid for the most part, in my opinion, and I've always kind of felt that way. So when people I knew in school would get scared by random people, it always confused me. So I kind of relate to this little girl, especially at the part at the end where she just makes friends with a monster. It's just like, well, shit. That's basically what my approach would have been. Why am I being afraid of this thing? Why don't I just make it my friend?
Yeah. All right. So my number 4 is, again, like, I think the book is better. But it is Shocker on Shock Street, where it takes place within a theme park based on a movie series of horror, like B horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And like 2 kids who.
Your brother?
Yeah.
I bought some food.
Okay. Sorry. Just.
Mm-hmm.
But it's they're basically like the test dummies. See if it's like safe and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a simple premise, and the twist is that the kids are robots.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, it basically becomes like the standard like robot revolution kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's very open ended with I believe in the episode. I don't remember the book, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But yeah, and again, my major issue with it is just the budget for the episode.
Mhm.
All right, number 3.
Okay, my number 3 is the episode Calling All Creeps. Basically, it revolves around this kid who is the token nerdy outcast kid who everyone calls a creep. And to get back at the girl who is bullying him, he sends out an ad, which is calling all creeps. And basically, he wants randomly creepy people to call her at the middle of the night and freak her out. But she sees it and switches it to his name in the ad before it runs in the local newspaper or whatever. So he now is inadvertently the general of this army of actual monsters that are apparently known as creeps. And the reason why I like this one so much is A, the design of the creeps is actually really, really good, and the makeup is really, really good. It adds oodles to the creep factor. But also, the way it ends is the platoon of creeps that are following this kid thinking that he's their general, basically decides that a world where everyone has to do what he says whenever he says it is worth turning everyone into monsters. And he basically ends up getting revenge on all the people that mocked him and bullied him and shit. So, once again, dark and twisted, sure, but happy ending.
Well, personal happy ending, not overall happy ending.
Well, I mean, I think it's framed as like a bittersweet ending, like he did something wrong, but he ultimately he's happier as it. I think it would have probably been a better ending if they had let him remain human, because he had proved his creep credentials by wanting to do this in the first place, and they still would have followed him and stuff. That would have been more interesting to me, because I sort of like the idea that a creep can be a literal monster, but it might also just be kind of like with the Yucatanians from Fairly Odd Parents. Like they like all of the bad things and they think all the good things are gross and icky. If you prove your credentials as a creep, it shouldn't matter what you look like, almost. Or to paraphrase Mark Chang, it does not matter how ugly you are on the outside, but how evil and vicious you are on the inside.
All right. So, my number 3 is also Calling All Creeps.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Jinx.
Suppose so, yeah. My major reason why is, again, well, like how you said, like the designs for the creeps, yeah, and also just the kind of dark. It's honestly very different from the other Goosebumps episodes on the fact that it's not as campy as you think it is.
Well, I mean, most of the camp actually comes from the ordinary human shit, not from the monster shit.
Yeah, it's genuinely creepy, which for a kids show is specifically like one in the night. Well, okay, maybe not in the 90s, but again, like it's creepy, which again makes sense. You know, calling all creeps.
Yeah, given the nature of the thing, particularly the moment where they're stirring the identity seeds, as they call them, into the cookies, and they're chanting like humans are the past, creeps are the future, and
Right.
which, given they're called identity seeds, a part of my brain that makes up bad jokes is like, is this the secret origins of identity politics? Are all people obsessed with identity politics just these weird, monstrous alien things?
Yeah.
In this case, why the hell are they so awesome looking?
Right. So, but again, like it's different from all the other Goosebump episodes that I remember, just on the fact that it's darker than the others, like in terms of story and overall tone and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, at least. I think that's why I like it a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
And one of the reasons I say it's a happy ending is we don't really get much indication that like turning a person into a creep will make them act any different necessarily. So he basically gets to still be himself in there. He looks different, which everyone calls him a creep anyway. So what the hell difference does it make?
All right. Okay. Number 2.
My number 2 is Monster Blood, and its sequel, both parts.
Mm-hmm.
Monster Blood Parts 1 and 2, which I think Monster Blood Part 2 was called More Monster Blood. I have a very strong connection with this episode because it was the first Goosebumps book I ever actually read, and I read it specifically because I liked the show's rendition of it so much. And this is one of the few times where I think the show actually might have improved on the mythology of the books a little bit, because in the books it was just sort of this unexplained magical novelty item MacGuffin thing, whereas in the show it's implied to be literally the blood of monsters used by a dark sorceress as like a spell ingredient. So yeah, they actually upped the badassitude factor of Monster Blood in the show, and it worked. Even though, regardless of how they explain the MacGuffin of it all, the qualities of Monster Blood make no sense, and that's sort of kind of the point, I think.
Right. Okay. My number 2 is, well, honestly, it'd have to be, A Day at Horrorland, I believe is the title.
Yeah.
Yeah. Granted, I'm more like the kind of spin-off series from the books that gets more into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Also, their covers are just amazing.
Yeah.
But the episode itself is fine. Obviously, it's very hokey and stuff,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really look like a theme park, to be honest. But
yeah, that's the thing about Goosebumps that a lot of people don't understand is I don't think they're supposed to be actually scary. I think
well, I get that. I was just talking about the episode itself. Like, it's too hokey even for itself. Like for Goosebumps, like I think it's even more hokey than.
Yeah, I think it was trying to like parody the campiness and the hokiness of theme parks.
Right.
Which is why they did that.
A part of me thinks they should have shot it in what's that what was that theme park that got flooded?
I know the one you mean, but I can't remember the name.
I'm gonna look that up real quick, but either way, I like the reason why it's my second is because it's really funny to me. Like it's funny and it's enjoyable to watch, and I just like the twist, like the two major twists in the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first one is that it's an actual monster park, like it's monsters actually run a theme park, and the one that it's like it's a TV show happening.
Yeah,
that monsters are actually watching at the end. And I haven't read the book.
Yeah,
I haven't read
the show.
Yeah, I haven't read the actual book, unfortunately. So I don't know if that's like the original ending from the book, but I think it's like really funny and it's good in terms of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Just not. That's pretty much it. That's why it's like number 2.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 1.
My number 1 is The Haunted Map. All parts of it. All parts of The Haunted Map. it has a lot more sincere creep factor to it than a lot of the other Goosebumps show does. And it takes place on Halloween specifically and is about sort of the dark powers of Halloween. So that also gives it a little bit of a boost. And it features my favorite sort of story template for these, which is there's a mysterious shopkeeper with mystical powers that people buy various things from, who comes in out of nowhere and has a dark secret that people don't know enough to take seriously, and then it proceeds to go all sorts to hell because they don't take it seriously. I also like the added bit of this version of that trope where the shopkeeper himself actually feels guilty for this, because he literally locks up the supernatural MacGuffin and is like, "Do not go in there because I don't want to be held responsible for unleashing what is apparently my own evil onto the world." And all I could think when I was watching this episode was, what the fuck is this guy's backstory? Like, seriously, what the fuck is this guy's backstory? Because apparently he made like 7 of these haunted mask things, and we only see 2 of them in the first part, and then again in the second part. And each of these masks holds some irredeemable evil from inside this guy. So who or what the fuck is this guy that he was able to shut off his inner evil into these masks repeatedly, and they're apparently really, really freaking evil, and then he's just there and immortal, apparently, because he's been doing this for centuries. Like, do we ever get a full backstory for him? I think we get just enough exposition to explain what the masks are, but we never really get a full explanation for him. And I want one. I want a spin-off series that explains the adventures of this one guy and why he was this like ancient evil sorcerer or something. I want that.
All right, so Jinx again, by the way, because my number one is the Haunted Mask. Unfortunately, is like just the first part of it, mainly, because, well, it's for a specific reason. Like, it's personal because it's like the first ever episode I watched of Goosebumps as a kid. So that's why it's number one, mainly. But also, it's just, I like the character of, I believe it's Annabeth.
Yes.
Yeah, and I like the character, and I like the actress who played her. And like, it was one of the better episodes in terms of like child acting and story.
Yeah.
And just the mask too. Like, all of them were just amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, it's just one of my favorite episodes, mainly because like it was the first episode I ever watched, so it has a special place in my heart.
The first episode of Goosebumps I ever watched was A Night at Terror Tower. And I remember because my cousin was sleeping over at our house and he brought a tape of A Night at Terror Tower with him when he came over one summer. And that was my first exposure to Goosebumps.
Right. Alright, so I guess that's it for it. Unless we have anything else to say about Goosebumps.
Nope, just Goosebumps is generally awesome.
Yeah, I wish there was a type of revival that took some of the old episodes and kind of gave them a newer coat of paint. And I don't. And I mean, like,
if they did that.
Yeah, I mean, like today, I know there'd probably be a big issue with that, obviously, but. And I think we had the discussion last year, but I just wish that Goosebumps got the. What was it? Got a revival and kind of took more from like the Haunting Hour.
Yeah, the Haunting Hour was a really, really great series, actually.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like more for like the Goosebumps for more young adults. Well, Goosebumps is more obviously for.
That's what it was. That was what it was intended to be. So yeah. It was supposed to be for like 13 to 15-year-olds, somewhere in there.
Yeah. All right, so that concludes our top 5 ranking.
Mhm.
And we shall move on to an article Dalton sent me some time ago.
Mhm.
All right, so this is from Screen Rant. 10 Things That Make No Sense About Hocus Pocus. This is written by Lane G. It's published September 22nd, 2020.
Wow, he really got it in there early if he wrote it on the 22nd.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a dude or a chick, to be honest. But okay, so the subheader is Hocus Pocus is a cult Halloween classic for a lot of people, but there's no getting around the fact that some things in it just make no sense. Honestly, you can make that argument about a lot of movies. I think the main question is,
Well,
do those 10 things detract from the enjoyment of the movie? Or are they so big that
also, yeah. My big question is, did you actually pick out 10 of the things that actually don't make sense about Hocus Pocus, or did you just pick random plot holes that could easily be explained if you thought about them for 5 seconds?
All right, so based on the lives and bewitchings of the Sanderson sisters, the witches were brought back from the dead after a virgin lit the black flame candle on Halloween night. It's been 300 years since they've been back on Earth, and they have one mission: to be young and live forever. As unstoppable of a movie as Hocus Pocus is, it's not free from errors. Scroll below to see 10 things that don't make sense. And again, the major things that matter are, do these 10 things detract in a way that is glaringly obvious, you know? And
And are the 10 things you picked actually 10 things that don't make sense, or were you just being an idiot while watching Hocus Pocus and missed a very obvious piece of exposition? Because it seems like this might, and I might be jumping the gun slightly, but it seems like this might be kind of in the style of like CinemaSins, where they'll call something that doesn't make sense, but it was explained in the movie, or there was a line that explained it, or something like that they just randomly forgot for some reason. And I get the feeling that there might be a lot of those in this case.
Okay, so all right, so number 10. How did Thackeray know about Billy and Winifred? When Thackeray Binks takes the kids to the graveyard, he tells the story of Billy Butcherson. Billy was Winifred's boyfriend, but after she found him sleeping in bed with her sister Sarah, she cast a spell to seal his mouth shut for eternity. What's odd about this scenario is that Thackeray knew about Billy's curse. It's highly doubtful that the Sanderson sisters told Thackeray this, especially since they died so quickly after casting a spell on him. Okay, but I feel like that's kind of a minor thing. And also, Thackeray, who is mostly a black cat throughout this, an immortal black cat throughout the movie, one via through just audience knowledge and intelligence, I'm sure one could piece in that he's been around for 300 years and been able to just, just think. Well, be able to like do research and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if I were turned into an immortal cat, a large part of my focus might be on the people that did the turning me into a cat thing. Also, this might have just been a rumor around his village. That was my thinking, because like,
oh yeah,
it didn't seem to surprise anyone that like when the random mystical smoke started rising out of the Sanderson sisters' cottage. Like I think he literally asked the guy, "Hast thou seen my sister Emily?" and the guy was like, "Oh, he's over, or she's over. I saw her over near the Sanderson sisters' cottage. Look, they conjure." Like, there's literally a line like, "Look, they conjure," and then giant mythical smoke.
Hey, don't
So,
you don't. You might want to get back to your mic.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, he literally asked the guy, "Hast thou seen my sister Emily?" And the guy was like, "Over there, look, they conjure."
Right.
So I don't. If the Sanderson sisters being witches was at all a secret, it was a very poor kept one. And speaking as someone from a very very small town, people in very very small towns are gossipy bitches even today. I can't imagine what it would have been like 300 years ago in Puritan freaking Salem, no less.
Right.
So
I was also going to say that Thackeray is like a teenager when he's turned into a cat.
mm-hmm.
Therefore, the story of the story, of I'm sorry, just give me a second. Of Billy.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy and Sarah could have happened within his lifetime or happened shortly before his lifetime, and his parents or people around town told him.
And I could even see this being a rumor that was spread among the teenagers of the village, like, especially given that they were Puritans, that this might have been the teenage equivalent of like, "Oh, did you hear?" It's basically the Puritan equivalent of, "Did you hear what that slut Sarah Sanderson did?" That's basically it's the Puritan teenage version of Mean Girls, essentially. Like, did you hear what that slut Sarah Sanderson did, and how her sister reacted when she caught his boyfriend sleeping with him?
Yeah, so there are so many ways you could be able to interpret it. I can kind of understand the base premise of the mistake.
Yeah.
But I think with inferring.
Yeah, it's not a big leap to think either this was a rumor around the village about, those devilish slutty Sanderson sisters and their devilish ways, or he did research for like 300 years that he was not doing much else.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 9. Why didn't the Sandersons cast a spell on the townspeople? When the Sanderson sisters are being interrogated by the townspeople, they attempt to cast a spell on them so they can live. Sadly, they all covered their ears so they couldn't listen to their words. However, as powerful as these women are, they couldn't sing louder to make their words heard by at least a few people. These are women who can smell children, shoot electricity out of their fingers, and ride brooms. They couldn't defeat a few angry townspeople. By the looks of the Sanderson sisters, Winifred appears to be the most talented, but she failed to cast her magic. Well, a part of me wants to put in the kind of argument of it is a Disney movie, and therefore they kind of have a very small, I would say, kind of always incorporate a soft magic system in terms of when they do use magic in movies and stories.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just, that's an argument, but I feel like it is kind of a straw man.
I mean, in this one case, in the case of Hocus Pocus, oddly enough, they played by the like Puritan Christian strawman playbook of witches, like the power to like smell children or enchant children with singing and things, and putting fluences on people, which is like the hypnosis and shit they do. That was all stuff that if you asked a Catholic reverend in the Middle Ages, he could have told you these are like the stock powers that witches get when they sign the old black book there. So if you wanted to go there, yeah, I could sort of see the argument. But number one, their hands were tied. Number two, they were trying to put a spell on people. That was the whole sisters sing thing they tried to do, and also the Puritans. And again, asterisk. This takes place in a universe where apparently, like, the Puritan definition of witchcraft was a thing. Yeah, they knew the like stock powers that witches tend to get, and therefore were ready for it. So, yeah, I don't really see a problem here. They tried to hypnotize or cause harm to the townsfolk by enchanting them with singing, and it didn't work. So that was basically all they could do. And it's not like Winifred didn't do anything after that, because that was when she called to the book and got the black flame candle spell rolling. So yeah, she did quite a lot actually after they were captured. There was the whole attempting to control them with singing, which didn't work, and then there was the essentially escape plan of, we'll give it a few hundred years when people don't know as much about witches or don't believe that witches exist anymore. Then we'll get lucky, right? Which, to be fair, is not a bad plan. Waiting a few hundred years before making your comeback is not a bad idea.
My question is, where were they during that time, like, in terms of afterlife?
She makes several joking references to hell. Like, Billy tells her to go to hell, and she's like, I've been there already. It's lovely this time of year, actually.
I just kind of assumed, a part of me assumed like a limbo.
I mean, sure, if you want to play it there, but like, they see a guy dressed as the devil, although a very cartoonish version of the devil, and they go master. So there's only so much leeway we have here.
All right, I was just anyway. That's completely subjective. Anyway,
Hocus Pocus is kind of intense for a Disney movie when you get right down to it. Like, they literally explain about the whole witches selling their soul thing. So kudos, Disney Channel. You had balls back in the day.
right. Now you're a cucked bitch right now. I said now they're a cucked bitch.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They are bending over backwards to please everyone except their families.
Right.
Which is classically not how things are done. But oh well.
Okay, so number 8. Why didn't Thackeray speak to his parents? Alright, so after the Sanderson sisters cast a spell on Thackeray, he was seen hanging around the townspeople while the sisters were being hanged. After the sisters died, Thackeray is seen rubbing against his father's leg, meowing uncontrollably. His dad shoos the cat away and calls it a beast while Thackeray runs to the woods to watch from afar. But if Thackeray could speak to the Dennisons and Allison, why couldn't he speak to his parents? A part of me... Okay, he said he has more here. Hold on. There's a theory out there that Thackeray didn't want to speak to his parents because the townspeople were against witchcraft and would assume he was evil. But if he didn't die, then what's the shame in trying? The spell that the Sandersons cast was strong enough to last over 300 years, so why not try? A part of me, I kind of want to say that he didn't learn to speak until after the fact. Like, the meowing was him trying to communicate, but he couldn't, and it took him a long time to learn how to speak proper English again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's my theory posed.
Yeah.
But again, like, you also have to keep in mind that this is a Disney movie, and more often than not, they kind of I don't know.
Gotta get the plot moving.
Yeah.
There's two ways you could interpret this. One is, like Brainstormer said, it took him a bit to figure out how to talk again, which, given that he had a cat's vocal cords, kind of makes sense. Like, part of me thinks he probably spent a long time over the 300 years that he was a cat to try and figure out how to speak like a human normally. There's also another possibility, which is part of the Sanderson sisters curse, or part of the Sanderson sisters curse was that he couldn't speak to loved ones, or his original loved ones, because that to me seems like a much more cursed thing to do. Because when you get right down to it, the Sanderson sisters curse wasn't very cursy, because it literally made him immortal. So, like, apart from the inconvenience of being a cat, there really wasn't many downsides to that curse, unless the curse was you'll live forever, but you'll live forever alone, and if you ever love anyone, they won't be able to understand you. That strikes me as the kind of curse that one would go to the old book for. So yeah, that if you want to give it an extra layer of fucked up, that's one of my theories, is that part of their curse was you'll live forever, but you'll live forever alone and never be able to talk to the people you love.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so number 7. How did Winifred know the driving laws? Those who have Disney Plus can watch Hocus Pocus, the spooky season, to recount all the Sanderson sisters' best moments. However, there was one scene that didn't follow the movie's timeline. When the Dissons and Allison are driving away from Sanderson sisters, Winifred spooks them and shows up at Max's window. While on her broomstick, she says, "Pull over, let me see your driver's permit." When Max swerves the car, she says, resisting arrest, as Max flings her into the woods. If Winifred comes from a time before cars and driving rules, how does she know about modern day laws?
I mean, she had been back for a while. Maybe she picked something up.
I also kind of assume maybe they just kept up to times in hell, or wherever they were in the afterlife.
Yeah, but they were also confused by children dressing up as monsters on Halloween. So I don't know.
Okay, fair. Yeah, no, fair enough.
Much water that holds.
I don't know. Maybe
I would just go with they had been paying enough attention while in the couple hours they had been back to maybe pick something up.
And again, like I hate that I go to this one. That more often than not, consistency in certain moments aren't really done in Disney movies. It's more of like the feel of the scene, and it could have been improvised, and they kept it.
Yeah, it's also a joke. So
yeah,
there's a certain level of meta you have to apply there. Now, granted, I don't like the it's a joke, so I don't have to play by any rules, like principle either. So I understand why she's pointing this, or he or she is pointing this out. I'm just saying, maybe she picked something up in the couple hours they had been back.
Like that one's not a bad thing. You know, I wouldn't say it makes no sense. I would say it's a weird thing to happen.
Yeah, it definitely counts as something that they got wrong. So
yeah,
kudos to you for actually getting one, because most of the other ones on this list so far we've had like reasonable, wouldn't take too long to figure out.
Yeah. All right. So
too,
so number 6. Why didn't Emily try to escape? When viewers are introduced to the Sanderson sisters, they're in the middle of creating a spell to take Emily Binks's youth and life. What's weird is that Emily is completely complacent with the sisters. She doesn't try to run away from them, scream, and doesn't seem to care that her brother just showed up to save her.
Did you forget that Sarah's like token witch power is the song thing?
Oh yeah, it's actually some fans believe that Emily was in a trance thanks to the witch's Sarah's singing voice, but it's never discussed. It will be interesting if the upcoming sequel will detail the hold of the sisters have on those they're praying after. Yeah, I'm sure we can just chop that up to she's in a trance.
Yeah, that was Sarah's major contribution to the trio was
Right. Well, I can agree because I don't think they show that ability until later in the film. I think it would have been better for setup.
She was singing it at the beginning. Too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it's been a while since I've seen Hocus
we
Pocus.
literally see Sarah flying out over the village in the credits, and then we hear her singing in the background.
Right. Okay. It's been a while. It has been a while since I watched Hocus Pocus, so my mind's a little blanking on certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So number 5. How did the teacher know about Thackeray's story? At the beginning of the movie, Miss Olin is telling Max and Allison's class about the tale of Thackeray Binks and the Sanderson sisters. She says that Thackeray has to live on forever as a cat, hoping to one day be reunited with his sister Emily. What's strange is how Miss Olin knows the tale of Thackeray Binks in the first place. If he doesn't speak to people and the sisters have been dead for 300 years, how is Thackeray's tale told, especially if his parents didn't know he was a cat? Perhaps the small plot hole is discussed in the sequel. Hey, shut up about the fucking sequel. But
okay, this one I totally freaking agree with because that genuinely makes fuck no sense because like she said, we see his father's reaction to the cat and it's like away beast away. So unless like on their deathbed his parents thought, oh no shit, that's what happened to Thackeray. So unless something like that happened off screen and then it became a folk story after that, there's no reason this story should exist.
yeah, no, okay. You know what? I'll grant them that. Okay,
Yeah.
so number 4. Where do the Sandersons get their ingredients from? With the Sanderson sisters ruling Hocus Pocus, the thought of them not appearing in the upcoming sequel is unfathomable. They make the movie as iconic as it is, especially when they're casting spells. When the sisters are making their potion for Emily at the beginning of the movie, they have everything they needed, including Dead Man's Toe. But 300 later, the women are back creating the same spell. How is it possible they have all the ingredients they had from hundreds of years prior, especially if they include the limbs of human beings? Surely those who took over the Sanderson house and turned it into a museum would have gotten rid of any human toes they found. I sort of agree,
really?
but
'Cause
I was gonna say, like, I sort of agree, but also the fact just because you don't see it doesn't mean they don't like do stuff, you know? Like maybe they got fresh ingredients from certain places.
Yeah.
Arguments can be made. I can see the point. It's just I think it does rely on audience being intelligent enough to figure things out on their own.
Yeah, I think it's a little presumptuous to think that that the owners of the museum would just get rid of all the ingredients because the whole point of the museum was to preserve the house as it was back in the day. And before the people who bought it and turned it into a museum, I don't think many people would want to go near the Sanderson house just for it being the neighborhood folktale type reasons. Like every neighborhood has at least one creepy old house or creepy old person in a creepy old house that you don't go near or you think is dangerous or whatever. And that's definitely the Sanderson sisters in this version of Salem's Case. So yeah, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't still have most of their ingredients, considering that they were captured shortly after brewing the first potion. So unless they use all their available ingredients on that one dose of potion, which I find highly unlikely, either they still had ingredients there, or they had enough of the old potion to sort of reconstitute it. So
You remember
I don't see any...
the dead man, you know, that they summoned.
Billy?
Billy. They could have taken his toe.
They could have, yes.
Yeah. Maybe that's what explain. Well, not just the rigor mortis, but why he was walking so weird.
It might, yes. She
Yeah.
might have, like, what? Well, we have you, Billy. Give us your toe because we need for spell ingredient to yank.
So number 3.
Mhm.
If hell was so bad, why didn't they want to live? What?
Mhm.
If hell was so bad, why didn't they want to live? That makes no sense.
Okay, first of all, apparently the Sanderson sisters don't really have a problem with hell. Because Winifred, like, casually jokes, I've actually been there, thank you. It's lovely this time of year.
Actually, they have that. They
and
have that picture
also-
up here.
Hmm?
They actually have that picture up, like the quote.
Mhm.
But continue.
And also, like, they're apparently on pretty good terms with the devil because when they see the guy dressed as a very corny, cheesy, Disney-fied version of the devil, they go master and become all impressed and shit. So, like, hell wasn't apparently so bad for them, at least not by their definition. And they wanted to live because having one night off after 300 years, I imagine, is kind of a shitty state of affairs. If I was brought back from the dead, I'd want to be back from the dead for more than just one night. Just on general principle. I can't imagine anything different. So.
True. Okay, so there are plenty of one-liners from Hocus Pocus that got turned into memorabilia for die-hard fans to wear when Halloween rolls around. This includes Winifred's line to Billy regarding hell. After Winifred argues Billy to attack the kids in the graveyard, he tells her to go to hell. Instead of being offended, as many would be, she said, "Oh, I've been there, thank you. I found it quite lovely." I think she's just being snarky.
It's possible, but given how she reacts to the devil,
Also, she's an evil witch. I'm sure they find hell to be kind of their heaven.
yeah, she sold her soul, and her sister's souls, or got her sisters to sell their souls along with her to the devil for power and knowledge and books. So, like,
Yeah, I mean, since I started watching it, this, Sabrina, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, they use heaven as the curse word instead of hell because it's inverted.
Yeah, because they're on the other team, so they're not fans of the Wings and Halos Brigade there.
Mm-hmm. Right. If she found hell so lovely, why wouldn't she want to go back there? Why would she want to live in fear where the mortals are? Well, technically, I think they're looking for immortality. So,
yeah, it's probably just down to it took me 300 years to get back, and I want to stay for a bit. I don't think it's necessarily that they have a problem with hell. It's just given how much effort it took us to get here in the first place, let's stay for a while.
Yeah, I mean, like, looking at a place of infernal darkness and brimstone, I'm sure it gets tiring real quick. It's nice to change scenery.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And especially given how they had one goal before they were executed, and they're still pissed off at all the people who executed them. I'm sure staying here for a little while just out of sheer stubborn spite, like, I'll show all those Puritan people who denied me, I'll become immortal and that'll teach them.
Yeah.
Like, that is totally a Winifred Sanderson, like, line of thinking. I could totally see her saying that. Like, they called me ugly. You remember how Winifred reacted to being called ugly. I can't imagine how her reaction to
Number
being
2?
killed would be any different.
Number 2?
Like, I'll show you. Basically.
Yeah, so number 2? Yeah, okay. So number 2 is Allison who she says she is.
This one I read ahead of time, and it's a very, very stupid theory, but go ahead and read it.
I think it's confirmed in a book or something, like a sequel book.
Maybe, but it's a very, very stupid theory nonetheless.
Yeah, okay. There's a rumor floating around that Allison is actually a witch herself. She and her family love witches so much that they ran the Sanderson Museum, and she defended Salem's witchy history in class. She was also far too intrigued in Winifred's spellbook. If she was a witch, understanding Winifred's powerful spells could have been very useful to her and her family. Now, we never saw Allison perform a spell, and that she was able to enter the graveyard without dying, but fans can't help but find small details that point her to being a witch. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
gonna get very, very angry at this. Number 1, in this particular movie, as well as in actuality, but in this particular movie, it is not rape or another kind of human being.
You were getting a little robot there.
Okay.
No, I can't hear you.
Okay.
I can't hear you, Don. Give it a second, folks. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So, my rant's being forestalled for a minute, but first things first, in this universe of this movie, as well as in actuality, but never the fuck mind, a witch is not some other class of human being. Witchcraft is not genetic, okay? In this movie. In this movie, we see the Sanderson sisters made a bargain for their power. We also, if you'll notice, in the scene where Winifred comes to claim her book back from the protagonist, and Allison casts a circle of salt, Winifred calls Allison a white witch. And a white witch implies that there is also good magic in this universe, which good on you, movie, for recognizing. But in either case, magic is something you learn, either by bargaining for it and power associated with it, or by simple, knowledge. It is not a mutant power or a genetic designation. So even if her family were witches, number 1, they'd most likely be the white kind, i.e. the, not demonic kind, or they would have learned it. And in either case, witchcraft is not a genetic disorder. It's a skill set.
Well, I'd make the argument that they could have had a witch in their bloodline, and they just didn't know because it goes back in times where you couldn't be a witch publicly, like the Salem witch trials and all. Or she's a practice.
Also, let's keep in mind that this is Salem we're talking about, and any version of Salem is going to be kind of witch-focused, because that's like the one important thing that happens there. Mm-hmm. Apologies to anything else important that happened in Salem, but most people think witches when they think Salem, for whatever that's worth.
Mm-hmm.
And if I grew up in Salem, I would probably be even more witch-inclined than I already am, which is saying something. So it's probably just a case of Allison and her family really like their town's history because, fuck it. Yeah, you basically, assuming any of the people that were accused of witchcraft were actually witches, which most of them weren't, But assuming that, you basically had a supernatural drama happen in your town's history. How is that not awesome? How can anyone look at that and go,
Oh,
this is totally boring and I don't care?
ha, ha. Sorry, eating pizza right out of the oven. Oh. I feel like that needs to be a drinking game, me eating pizza on stream.
Possibly.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's the spicy meatball.
it's cheese pizza. With pepperoni. There's pepperoni pizza as well. Anyway, number 1, who woke up the book at the end? It appears that the only person who can wake up the spell book is Winifred Sanderson. When she needs the book's assistance, the book's eyes open and floats her way. It's assumed that the Sanderson sisters are dead. The book wouldn't have a master anymore. What's strange is that at the end of the book's eye opens up. Does this mean that the Sanderson sisters aren't really dead? Who else has the ability to wake the book?
That's not really a problem with the movie, though, or a thing that doesn't make sense about the movie. That's just a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't have an answer for you unless maybe the devil showed up to claim his property back, considering that Winifred's not going to be using it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Or maybe Allison went and grabbed it, and the book is familiar enough with her to be like, oh, you.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah, I don't think that's, even if it were something that didn't make much sense about the movie, I don't think it matters much, considering it's basically the equivalent of a post-credit scene anyway.
All right. So our last topic is a debate, which we haven't done in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're discussing favorite. We're going to be debating which is better in terms of Halloween cartoon specials. However, me and Dalton picked something from the same show. The Grim Adventures of Billy Mandy. I have something that he has the traditional Halloween special. I have a backdoor pilot movie for a show that was never made to be.
So for those that are familiar with Billy and Mandy as a franchise, yes, it's finally the debate you always wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
Billy and Mandy's Jacked Up Halloween versus Underfist.
Yep. You want to start or should I?
Go ahead.
Okay. So Underfist, which was originally, I think, was meant to be kind of a backdoor pilot for a show spinoff from Billy and Mandy, which was centered on Halloween. And it starred Irwin, Irwin, Hostel Gatto, Jeff the Spider, Fred Burger, and General Scar.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a 6th person? I thought there was no.
No.
I
think that was everybody.
Okay, and basically they're just fighting like what were referred to as trick-or-treaters, which were basically like monster candies that came to fuck up Halloween, and their leader was like a I think a candy bunny demon.
Yes, and a version of Mindy who was turned into a witch by plot convenience magic.
Yeah. So yeah, it's basically, it has the standard Billy and Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy humor, which is just, I would argue that it's some of the best in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically like a horror 80s action movie, like action movie. It is like the closest thing I can say to it. Like say what?
I would go so far as to say it's almost like Halloween Avengers.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's. I also think the characters, and knowing me, if anyone knows me,
He's talking about characters, the ring.
Yeah, it's just the characters in this movie have a lot more depth than they did in the actual show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, it's not a lot, obviously, because I think mainly it was more for comedic purposes, but there's still stuff there.
It was let's get all the endearing scene stealing comedic relief sidekicks together and see if they can make an awesome team. Oh look, they did. Cool.
No. Yeah, no, it's an interesting story. Just it's I don't know. I like it. I can't really explain it because like it just makes me feel. I like it a lot. I can't really explain it that much. Technical wise, it's better animated than even better animated than the actual series. I'd say, which I think is just it had a bigger budget and it could do a lot more interesting things. Like it looked like the animation looked crisper. It looked more defined and like there were like more dynamic shadows and stuff. Again, that's just like the like director / creative visual guy I am. But overall, like I said, like it's just a genuinely fun romp. That's like a action. Yeah, it's a horror Avengers B movie that you could just enjoy. And yeah. Also, their theme song at the end is just it's awesome.
Okay, so my go.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I don't dislike Underfist. Let me just get that out of the way right now. But in terms of a Halloween special, Billy and Mandy's Jacked Up Halloween kicks its ass. To start off with, Billy and Mandy already kind of lend themselves to Halloween because just the nature and even the animation style of Billy and Mandy is very Halloween oriented on a bad day even. But Jacked Up Halloween takes that and turns it up to 11 to the point that we even get its own personal variation on music that we don't get in any other episode. It's centered on the very notion of trick or treating, and tries to work in an in-universe explanation for why trick or treating is a thing, and it even provides a not entirely wrong interpretation of the origins of jack-o'-lanterns, twisted a little bit for in-universe reasons, but no worse than the Great Pumpkin from Charlie Brown. And if we're going to allow the Great Pumpkin to continue to exist and so on, which I don't, I have no problem with, then we should certainly give Billy and Mandy the benefit of the doubt. I mean, Jack is a very interesting and compelling character in his own right. It sort of was a transition episode from the Grim and Evil season 1 era of Billy and Mandy to what it eventually solidified into later on. And like I said, it focuses explicitly on trick-or-treating, the rending of the veil specifically when Jack opens the door to the underworld, and it ends with Jack in the underworld, like the original Jack-o'-lantern from the original myth ends up in, because of course the story of the original Jack-o'-lantern was there was a dude that was such an asshole that even the devil didn't want him, so he just had to wander the earth aimlessly as a ghost, lighting his way with a turnip, which eventually became Pumpkin because cross-cultural pollination, whatever. But yeah, and even the animation style, I think, tries to evoke the classic Halloween feel that really puts you in the mindset of a kid who's about to go trick-or-treating. And I think it's worth noting that I watch Billy and Mandy's Jacked Up Halloween every year on or around Halloween, because it is just that much of a Halloween staple for them. And unlike something like Charlie Brown or one of the other more traditional Halloween specials, which are a little bit tame and not exactly willing to always have a good laugh at themselves, Billy and Mandy comes with the usual dark and twisted humor that Billy and Mandy is known for. You get trick-or-treating, you get the parade of demonic pumpkins, you get a slightly twisted G-rated version of the story of Jack-o'-lantern, you get fun with pranks, which is not something, the trick part of trick-or-treating, which you don't really get much in many of these. And you get it all wrapped up in this sort of homage to classic Halloween animation. So I honestly can't think of anything necessarily wrong with this. And Wayne Knight, who famously played Newman on Seinfeld and a couple other famous roles, absolutely kills it as Jack. He plays exactly the kind of pompous, semi-self-important trickster you'd want him to play for a character like this. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's all I got. So, this will be a little fun thing I ask of the audience. Which one do you guys like more, Underfist or Jacked Up Halloween? Let us know in the comments.
For anyone in the comments who's actually seen both movies, we may have picked ones that people outside of our generation aren't very familiar with.
Which is shocking.
Because I don't think I'm pretty sure Ed is a few years older than both of us, and therefore he probably hasn't even heard of Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, or he might not have.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and